Hi folks, holiday season is upon us, so I thought I'd do a collection of advice for putting together a holiday session. Whether you are putting together a holiday session for an ongoing campaign or planning out a one-shot, this is a collection of advice for putting together a holiday session. Because I think, as the holidays near, get kind of in that spirit. It can be very fun to have a bunch of people over and have a little bit of a theme for the night. So first of all, I think it is great if you can draw upon holiday traditions or stories that you and your table are going to be familiar with. For example, Ryan ran a one-shot that was Christmas Carol, where each of the monsters that were kind of big monsters that we fought were the various ghosts of Christmas that he kind of created into their own little thing, and we had to help guide. It was He did a lot of puns with the names, but we essentially were guiding Scrooge. Ebenezer Scrooge. Sorry, pregnancy brain for a moment. We were essentially guiding Scrooge through the one shot to make sure that he made it alive and learned his lesson. But you could also I did a Krampus-inspired session in my campaign where, you can do something based off the Maccabees where the party has to hold a temple for a certain amount of time and figure out how to make that work. I think drawing upon those kind of familiar themes, but then finding fun ways to turn them on their heads or make them into an adventure, because the table is going to kind of recognize, and then they will be able to buy in a lot faster into what is going on because it's familiar. Second thing I want to bring up is how long to plan the session. So if this is a group that you get together weekly or every other week and you just say, hey, one of these sessions we're going to do a holiday session, then you can kind of just stick to however long your sessions usually go. Now, if you're putting together a one-shot, you might want to check in with folks and just kind of see, how much time are they going to have? I generally think for, a holiday one-shot, it's nice to plan around kind of maybe that 2 to 3 hour mark instead of 3 to 4, just because the holidays get really busy for a lot of people, so sometimes finding a whole afternoon where you can get together and game might be harder than carving out an evening. Also can be a lot easier if you're gaming with your family, just to throw that into an evening instead of having it be an all-day thing. But if the folks that you want to game with want to make it an all-day thing, great. Maybe, you've got a whole bunch of time. You're all sitting around the fire and getting nice and cozy. You're like, well, we're stuck at home. It's cold outside. Let's play lots and lots of games. And that way you're just not planning something that you're not going to get to finish, or planning something and then all of a sudden having to try and figure out how to stretch it out. I also think these are the types of games that it's really great to just lean into the fun, sometimes goofy holiday spirit, and kind of make sure that the whole table is going to buy into that, to let them know, might be a little bit more of a lighthearted session, or we might be a little lax on some rules here and there to embrace the story elements, especially if you're trying to adapt a story to a rule set that maybe doesn't quite fit exactly, but kind of setting the mood. Okay, so let's talk about if you are planning a standalone one-shot. First of all, I think it's great to come with base characters, especially if you are playing into a story or fable. You can have characters that would be fitting to be in that story. I like to kind of come up with, here's the character sheets. I usually have 1 or 2 extra to allow the players to kind of pick what kind of character they want to be. And then I also leave a few things blank so that the players can fill in the name or some of the details on it, but I at least know the kind of base stats and abilities are going to be there so that I'm planning the session kind of around those characters. I'll also say it is great to use either rules that your table is already familiar with or very easy to pick up on rules. because, oftentimes with the holidays, there's a lot of stress going on already. So maybe adding a whole new complicated rule set, especially for a one-shot, isn't the time. And especially if you're just getting together to kind of have a goofy time and chill out, might not be the time to dump a whole bunch of rules on folks. It can also be a great opportunity to maybe plan out a high-level one shot. Maybe those like level 15, perhaps level 20 that you often rarely get to in a regular campaign, and give the players some really fun abilities to play with. Now, the other side from the like high level is going super basic. So a friend of ours recently ran a really fun, just kind of like goblin, we had to get out of a dungeon alive, where he came with a stack of character prompts. So it was a special ability and the name of the goblin. And so we went through at least one or at least 2 or 3 goblins each, all of the players. And so every time one of them died, we just drew the next one. So we used all of the goblin stats from the monster manual, so it was very kind of easy to be like, okay, here's all my stats. The only thing I have to keep track of is my special ability. And then the name, it was a name and a like phrase to inspire the character. So that gave us a lot of freedom creatively to come up with who this character was, a little bit of their personality, and it was just fun and silly and goofy. So I could see you doing that with goblins. I could also see that with like a bunch of different creatures just out of the monster manual that can maybe tie into a holiday one-shot. Perhaps you're all Santa's elves and things are going horribly wrong at Santa's workshop and you need to fix it. A big thanks to all of our patrons, especially Eleni. If you want to help support our channel, you can head on over to patreon.com/rollforinitiative and check out the perks of being a patron. All right, let's get back to the advice. Now, if you are working a holiday session into a ongoing campaign, I have a few ideas for you. So the first thing is kind of figuring out, is this something that you're going to try and tie into the lore of the world, that maybe there's an existing holiday tradition or legend that your players stumble across? Or is this something that you're just going to kind of like pull the characters out of the world to experience? One of the holiday sessions that I ran in my campaign was a getting kind of pulled out of the world into another dimension. A lot of holiday traditions do have a magical kind of element to it, so I think this is very easy to lean into. Also, for a holiday thing, it's easy to get your table to just kind of go, yep, okay, cool, we're not going to ask how we ended up here. Maybe they get pulled to another dimension because they've been summoned to solve this problem. Maybe there's a magical item that pulls them into a little pocket dimension that then they have to, go through the little story in the book to be able to pop back out into their regular dimension. I think whatever it is, kind of figuring that out first will definitely help you figure out how to plan it out. I also think a holiday session in a bigger campaign, it can be really fun to give your players a special item at the end of that session, and have it tie into something with the theme of that session. So if they were helping Santa out, maybe they get one of Santa's sleigh bells, and that's a magic item that when you throw it down, it puts out like a 10-foot square of ice and makes a difficult terrain. Just an idea. If you're battling Krampus, hey, you can get Krampus's bag, which happens to be a bag of holding. Figuring out kind of something and maybe taking something from a manual, one of the books already, and just changing the flavor of it a little bit to tie into the theme can be a really fun way of just kind of like giving a nice little gift to the group at the end. I also think it is great to just kind of set the mood for a holiday game. One of the easy things to do is to have snacks that are kind of holiday themed. Perhaps you do spiced apple cider that just happens to also be, in the world at the festival that your players are walking through when they get summoned to go help somebody with something. I've also seen the idea of using chocolates or candies as the little miniatures that your players have to fight, and whoever kills them gets to eat that one. You could also do that with gingerbread men, which could be a cool battling gingerbread men, and then you actually get to eat the gingerbread men. And the final thing is gifts. If you are playing with a regular group that you usually do a gift exchange, maybe you find a way to kind of tie that into the session at all. And one way is, the players can exchange their gifts, and then have the characters exchange gifts as well. This is something that I've done, and I think especially if you're going to do this, give the players a heads up so that they can kind of figure out what they're going to get for the other characters. It's oftentimes helpful just to let them know, hey, if it's a common item or a trinket and it's under X amount of gold, you can get it. Don't worry about trying to role play finding it or something. We'll just say you've at some point gone out and picked it up. I think having this in game really provides a great opportunity to have these great character moments, some character development, and really great inter-party interactions. Maybe if you have kind of two characters that haven't really had a great opportunity to interact, you can maybe try and orchestrate that one of them will get the other person's name. So it prompts some maybe pairings that you might not normally end up with. All right, there you go. Those are some of my suggestions for kind of broad suggestions for how to think about and approach planning a holiday session. Have you run any really fun holiday sessions? I'd love to hear about them down in the comments below. Maybe they will help give some other people some ideas. I hope that you have a really great holiday season. Don't worry, this isn't our last video before the end of the year, but just kind of in the theme. Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hey, you should subscribe because we make videos here every week about tabletop role-playing games and our other geeky interests. All right, I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye! For anybody curious, my shirt says, always have a plan. It might not go to plan, but I always try and have some kind of plan when I'm running a game.